I would be so good to you. Who knew a text like that from a Knoxville guy would change and help so much of how I felt about moving on? This is Wandering the Wild Mess with Heather Morgan. I am so happy you're here. I want to start off by saying I appreciate you if you are listening right now because I am learning as I go and I'm just enjoying being able to share all these perspectives with you. Some of the things that I've heard though is people are ready for a little more mess. But I wanted to share this story because it really changed my perspective on moving on, and I touched on it in an earlier episode, just how really sometimes whenever there's a lot of change, there is a moment in time where you go, I'm going to be okay. And those that I'm going to be okay can come in a number of different ways. And I promise you it will come if you're waiting for it right now. It's just often the unexpected timing of life, and you don't know when that, oh my gosh, I'm going to be all right on this side of it, is going to come knocking to your door, knocking on your door, or in this case, sitting at a honky tonk in Nashville. So let's get into it. I gave a little bit of this story, but I wanted to go into it just because it was such a critical part when I look back at how I was able to get through my separation knowing that I'd be okay. So, if you listened before, I had mentioned that my separation started June of 2022. And I then made the decision that I was going to move to Tennessee. I didn't know all the details. I went out to Tennessee in August and looked at houses just to see the area, see if I'd move here. I knew I was going to, but it took a while. So in December of that year, 2022, I didn't want to talk about my divorce with the family much. So I didn't want to go to the Christmas party. So instead, I booked a flight to do touristy stuff in Nashville because I hadn't before. So I'm at the hotel bar having a drink before going out. At this point, I had never went out downtown in Nashville. I was by myself, landed, got ready, went to the hotel bar, grabbed a drink, and a guy was talking to me. I remember he was kind of a little, I don't know, probably not the vibe. And so there was a group of girls from Minnesota there, and they were like trying to kind of get me away from him. So they swooped me up and said, "Do you want to come out with us?" And I'm by myself. So I'm like, sure. So I end up going with them and I say, "Hey, I really want to go." And this is so like if you live in Nashville, just like, oh my gosh. But I didn't know, I'd never been. I was like, I want to go to Aldean's, that's kind of like where you want to go if you're, new to this place. So I get them to go with me because to Aldean's. So we're at Aldean's and we're doing the dang thing, whatever. And it's cold and they're from Minnesota. So there's football on. We're, whatever, having a great time. Well, we end up going to to honky tonk. I lose them somehow though. I can't really find them. They're talking to Vikings fans, and I see this guy sitting at the bar. And I don't know. I know everyone hopefully can relate to this, or maybe it's just me, but sometimes I feel like there's people, and I already said reason, season, lifetime, right? People in your life. There's always a purpose. I also feel like sometimes I can look at someone, and this could be anyone, male or female, just a human, and know that I'm supposed to know them more or that they were there for a reason. And I'll talk about that in other stories because it's definitely happened quite frequently to me since all of this change. But this was one of the like sooner times I really knew. So I see this guy, and for some reason, I just feel this pull like I'm supposed to say something. And so I say, "Oh, you guys are watching the game." I don't know, some really dumb comment. And they're like, "No, we bet on it." whatever. So we just start talking, and they're both in the military, and I'm, pretty tipsy at this point. And I remember the guy was like, "Yeah, I'm leaving for Korea on January 2nd. So we're just kind of out celebrating." And I was like, "Oh, great." And I was like, "I should write you." This is like the comment because I'm getting divorced. So I don't have anything else to do. I don't even know why I'm like saying that. Like that just seems like a weird thing, but he was like here for it. So we ended up talking for a little while, and then I find my Minnesota friends and they're like, "Okay, we're going to Luke or no, we're going to Whiskey Row." So I was like, "Okay, we're leaving." And then the guy's like, "Oh, well, can I come with?" And I'm like, "Sure, I guess." So he stands up and I'm like, "Oh," and then I'm like, "If you know me," I say, "Well, how old are you?" And he tells me, and I'm like, definitely was younger than me, but I was like, "All right, it's fine." So we walk over to Whiskey Row, have a great time. I'm just vibing, everything's great, yada, yada, yada. Can I even say that? We go back to my hotel, have a great time. And in the morning, we're talking a little bit more just about life and the military. And I see his ID, and he's even younger than he said. And I'm like, "Really?" So it was right before he left. Like I didn't compute it at the time. Like I saw the year, but I was like, "Wait a minute." And then he was leaving. And then I text him and I was like, "Really?" And he was like, "Yeah, but at this point it already been what it was." And so I kind of just, nothing, not thinking about it again. It's fine. So the next day, and he's from Knoxville. So he's born and raised in Knoxville, lived there his whole life, never even had left the country, and then was going to Korea. And so definitely was going to be a change for him. And it wasn't enlisted. He was like an army officer. So I guess that's maybe why I didn't think of him as young. But anyways, so the next day, so he's back in Knoxville and I'm still in Nash, and he texts me and says, "I would be so good to you." And I'm like, "Oh my goodness." Like, sure. No, knowing how old he is now and just like, "Okay, well, I'm sure you would." And I let it be. So enter, the rest of the trip's great. I get back home to Utah. And I remember when I left Tennessee to go back home, and this is right before Christmas. I got on the plane. Like when I was getting onto the plane, I was like, I don't even want to go back to Utah. I just want to stay in Tennessee. And I kept thinking about it. It was one of those where I've never had this in my life where I got on a plane and I kind of considered just getting off. And I never done that before. So I'm sitting there, and weirdly, the flight attendant even said, if there's anyone that wants to get off the plane, they can't, it was weird. I'm trying to like recollect exactly, but it was so like, what kind of sign is this? Like, I actually am thinking about just not being on this plane. And then she says that. I was like, am I supposed to get off this plane? But I didn't for whatever reason. I didn't. So I fly back to Salt Lake, and there's a few more days till Christmas. It's going to be my first Christmas alone. Everything else has already been weird. I'd spent Thanksgiving alone. I was just not in a headspace to be with my family. I just kind of wanted to be different. And when I say that, it's like I was the one who cooked Thanksgiving every year, like full on the turkey, the stuffing. We hosted. So I was used to being like a whole day ordeal preparing food for our families. We would switch. I would cook for his family one year, and then the next year, my family. So that had been happening for so long. And now I was just drinking wine by myself. But I kind of wanted that. I wanted everything to just feel different. So now it's Christmas, and it's Christmas time. I'm out with one of my best friends, and I freaking love her. She's such a yes. girl like me. And she's like, do it, do it, do it, do it. So we're at this spot. We're at Wingnuts, which is like a local favorite. We're at the one in Draper, just having some beers. And then of course she's like, tequila shots. And I'm like, sure. So we're taking tequila shots, and Mr. Knoxville is texting me for, who knows. So I'm writing and I'm like, I just wish I didn't come back to Utah. I wish I would have stayed in Tennessee. And he goes, well, why don't you just come back? And I was like, well, I mean, he's like, come back, come to Knoxville before I leave. And I was like, I was just there like a week ago, And I was like, but I want to. And he was like, what's stopping you? And then I look over at my friend Elena and she's like, yeah, what's stopping you? Nothing. At this point, nothing to lose, nothing, nothing. So I book a one-way flight at Wingnuts to Knoxville. Never been to Knoxville. Met this guy once, and now I'm going to Knoxville the day after Christmas. So, yeah. So I spend Christmas Day hiking by myself with my pup. Well, so yeah, me and the pup hiking, spend some time with my mom and sister, then go see my good friend and her husband and adorable little boy and spend the night just hanging out with them and have an early flight to Knoxville. So I'm flying to Knoxville, and the whole flight, I'm like, this is just going to be for the plot because I have no idea. And I remember him saying all these things that we were going to do. And he was like, I'll come pick you up, all these things. But I was like, I'm getting a rental. I'll have my own hotel. Like, I don't know this person, but I feel like I should go because why not? So I fly in. I don't know I'm literally like, I don't even know what this is going to be like. I'm flying in and they get snow, of course, because I'm flying there, the Utah girl bringing the snow. Everyone's on the airplanes talking about it. Oh my gosh, the roads are going to be so crazy. Even this woman next to me is like, here, get my number. Like, you don't live here. You're going to be driving in the snow because I had a rental. I was like, I've been driving in the snow since I could drive, but okay. She was so sweet. So we get there. I land. He's not there, which is probably good because I don't even know what I'm doing. And I get my rental and I'm meeting him where he is. And I go and I remember I get there and I mean, the snow was fine. So I get there and he comes out and I'm like, literally as he's walking, I'm like, what is even happening? What's even happening? But it's fine. So he gets in the car. We like go, we decided we go back to my hotel or whatever. And I remember just talking to him and I was like, oh, do you want, like, I forgot to grab beer. Like, I don't have any drinks. And he was like, okay, that's fine. I was like, do you want me to like stop? Should I go to a gas station? He's like, I'm good. And I realized it wasn't even like me that wanted to drink per se, but I was so used to, if I was like on a trip with my ex, like there's no way we would be like landing a flight and then just going back to our hotel without getting beer on a vacay. There's no way. And I was like, it was one of those moments where I'm like, oh, people are different. Like, that's not like necessarily a must for everyone. And so it was kind of like a light bulb, like of refreshing to me. And it wouldn't be the last. So we end up having a great time. We spend the whole week together outside of like one time where he did stuff with family. Cause at this time he's leaving to go to South Korea in, a week. And my whole life's changing. So we have this like parallel changes of everything coming up in our life, even though they're completely different. And so everything that he said on the phone when we were or actually we were texting that he wanted to do, we did. So like the hiking, waterfalls, the restaurant, he said. And at the time, I don't even know, like, I didn't even know where these were, but I was like not holding my breath because I was definitely used to a lot of words, less action. And this was like follow through of everything you said. I needed to see that that existed because that's exactly what I was unaware existed like that. It was just, it made my heart so happy to just see that that is possible. I appreciated it and loved it so very much. I really can't even articulate how much I needed to see that. And I think sometimes in our life, to kind of make the story more than just that, is that sometimes we're such in our same patterns that it's not until we allow ourselves to get out of those things that we see that there are other ways of doing life, that other people are different. And I think it's just important to be exposed to a variety of ways that people treat you. It was just very, it was much needed, is what I'll say. So we have this great time. And okay, I'll this is gonna be the embarrassing story. There's like so many because a lot went on this trip. But I told you that he was younger than me, a lot younger than me. So one of the days we were spending time in Knoxville, but then we end up going to Gatlinburg. And I had never had moonshine, and it's so fun there. They have all these moonshine tastings, whatever. So we went, and the first place was like a seltzer tasting though. So we stopped there, and everywhere you go up there, they have to ID you before they're just giving you free booze. So we go to one, and the guy asks for our IDs, and we put them, and he's looking at them very closely. And I'm just inside, I'm just like, whatever, because he goes, "You know what? Can I ask you guys a question?" And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, here it goes." Like, what is he gonna say about the age gap? I know it. Like, and he goes, "So wait, how did a boy from Knoxville meet a girl from Utah?" And I was like, "Oh," kind of relieved. And he just said, "In Nashville." And that was it. And then he was like, "Have you been to Utah? Oh my gosh, it's the greatest." That whole thing came up. But I was just like dying. Like, if he was going to be like, "Wait, like, what is this?" I don't know. That's the one thing that I feel like women, when you're with younger men, you have to think about. Like, it feels weird where I have talked to men. I don't think they feel weird if the girl's substantially younger than them. Like, they're not like, "Oh my gosh, are getting IDs and then, I'm older than her." Like, it's different. I don't know if other women that have been with younger men feel that way, but I was like cringing at the thought of him saying something about it. So, thankfully he didn't, but I'm sure he was thinking it because he definitely knew. So anyways, we have a great time, and the crazy thing is that as we're exploring Gatlinburg and we're drinking moonshine, he's like very protective of like me not getting too drunk, like making sure I'm good, like all of these things. And I'm thinking in my head, like, I'm used to someone getting way more drunk than me. So they have no time to worry about me. And this is that polar opposite. This is someone who's concerned that I could be getting too drunk and trying to ensure that I'm good. And again, it was just like, wow, this is really different than what I'm used to. And take aside the age gap, it wasn't even that, it's like, doesn't even matter because all of these things were just they new to me experiences. that I realized doesn't really have anything to do with age, but more of just like the character of the man and just who they are and who they want to be, etc. So that was all really refreshing from all of the layers of just doing everything you said, being super protective without being overly controlling or anything like that. Just the smallest gestures of kindness and thoughtfulness that were just, I don't know, that I just had not really experienced in so long. And that whole trip was just overly exactly what I needed. And so the crazy thing is that I wasn't going to spend New Year's with him. I was going to go back home. So I go to Chattanooga and he's still in Knoxville with his friends. And I decide like I'm going to do Chattanooga. And then when I'm there, I'm having a great time. And him and I are still texting because he's not yet left for South Korea because it wasn't until the second. And I was supposed to fly out of chat back to Salt Lake, but then my New Year's plans with my girls changed. And I really didn't want to be in energy at home in Utah for the new year to ring in the new year. I was like out with that whole vibe. So I was like, oh, I have an outfit that I packed that I never wore that was dressy enough that I was like, why don't I do New Year's in Nashville? That could be fun. So I impulsively changed my flight home from Chattanooga and canceled it and booked a new flight from Nashville to Salt Lake the day on New Year's Day. So I was still texting him and I'm like, I think I'm going to go to Nashville for New Year's. And he was like, why don't you come to Crossville with me and my friends in this cabin by the water? And I'm like, I can't do that. Like, I don't like his friends. Like, I can't do that. So I'm kind of like leaving it be at the time. I go find someone to give me a blowout, yeah, of my hair because we had this hot tub in Gatlinburg. It was freaking amazing. And my hair was a wreck. And then I didn't have a hotel anymore. And I was just going to drive to Nashville. It was just so chaotic. But anyway, so I get my hair done and I go to this cute little restaurant in Chattanooga and I'm sitting at the bar and these two girls start talking to me and they're like UT grads and they're just wanting to chat. And I kind of start telling them the story. I don't even know how it came up. And they were like, you have to go to Crossville for New Year's. And I was like, I don't know, like his friends, like he's younger, like I'm going to be there with his friends. Like, I don't know. I don't even know them. Like, I don't want to impose. Like, I don't know. And they're like, no, you have to go. And they're like reading his text and they're like, no, he wants you to go. You have to go. So I end up saying, all right, fine, I'll come. So this is now like the day before, I think this is the 30th. And so I end up driving to Crossville and spending that night and then New Year's Eve with him and his friends in this cabin. And I will be honest, I was thinking like, what is this going to be like? And literally, it was so much fun. His friends were super nice. I got to learn a lot about them. They were all born and raised in East Tennessee and just kind of hearing about their lives and stories. Like I got there and there was like a couple that was married and the wife was pregnant and they had like fostered all these kids and they had adopted kids. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so, although older than them, they had already been doing all this life that I had never experienced yet. So, it really wasn't weird at all. It was so much fun. And I just spent it with this person that made me know that I was going to be okay. And the mess of it was, though, I still remember I, of course, drank too much. I mean, it was New Year's Eve. But I remember my ex had texted me, and that was when I was like, and said just something that really just I remember I was just crying in the bathroom because I just didn't want it to be like that. Like, I didn't want him to be so angry at me. Like, I understood why he was angry because I was changing his whole life and he didn't want it, and it seemed like I was letting us down and I hurt him on purpose, and there were so many things, so I'm giving all of his anger all the validity that he needed, but it just was so hard for me to process getting random angry texts telling me I was someone that I knew I wasn't, but how he felt I was. So I think about that, and if I didn't have that experience with the Knoxville guy, I feel like I would have been at home just feeling miserable. But to go out of the bathroom after the tears and just see someone with like a smiling, happy face, just ready to ring in the new year with me was helpful. And it's not even like I was replacing, like, I knew this wasn't going to be my forever person. I knew he was off to, South Korea in a couple days. And I didn't even know if I'd ever talk to him again at this point. It just was what it was. And it was just fun. And I was just doing it all for the plot. But it needed to be what it was for me. Like, that whole trip and everything that we did, like, was 100% necessary for my healing. And so I say all that to say is that sometimes when we're like, how does this all work out? We really do get presented the people that can help us heal. I mean, sometimes it's just within us, but when we need those other interactions to kind of open our eyes to things, like, what I learned is that there are people that will be more actions than words. There are men that will do what they say. There are men that wanna protect and be this way, and this is not to bash my ex and say that he can't be or wasn't any of these things, but I was just afraid of finding that what I think I need or what I knew I needed in someone else and then seeing that it exists. And it does. And I think that all of the things that we want from this life, we're able to have if we just keep an open mind and let them come to us. And so this whole message came to me in the form of a younger than me Knoxville boy that absolutely is a gem of a human. I'll say that. And for those of you that's curious, I did still continue to talk to him while he was in South Korea. So it was good to know that we were just both kind of going through this crazy change together. And that has now just fizzled to what it is. And there's another story there. But I think it was just an important and crucial, I don't want to call it a relationship, but a critical person that had to come into my life and show me things I needed to see. And I think I reciprocated some of that for him. I think probably what he took from it was different than me, but we both kind of needed each other in that moment. And I think that's what's so great about putting yourself out there to humans and experiences is that you'll often find exactly what you need if you just open yourself up to it. I wasn't seeking him or seeking to find those things, but they came to me because I was open to receiving. So that would be my message for you. Be open to receiving, be open to saying yes to things. I mean, I'm not saying book a one way to Knoxville when you meet someone once, because I feel like that would be very reckless of me to recommend such a thing. But these are the kind of stories that I'm telling you. I'm barely knowing these humans and I'm making some questionable decisions, but they're working out because everything always works out for me. I have to say that out loud because I have to believe that because if I don't, then I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing if I don't believe that good things will come. That's just my maybe it's delusional, maybe it's some people may think, "Oh, it's toxic positivity," but I don't see it or view it that way. I think you just decide in your head if you're gonna have a bad day or a good day, and then the day agrees with you. So, thank you again. I'm so happy you're here and listening to another story. There will be plenty more, but have a great day, and thank you so much for wandering this wild mess with me.